All right, what's up? Welcome back to another Let's Backflip Happy Hour. I'm Ryan Fring, one of the co-creative directors. Joining me, as always, is John Shoemaker. How's it going, John?
It's going great. Joining you as sometimes.
That's right. It's like 1 in 4. John will be here. But we've actually been talking. It took a little bit of time to get this set up because Luke wasn't here, our Luke of all trades. And that means John and I have to do it, and Maria helped. And we're a little slower, but we're here. We're excited. Thanks, Sam, for joining us.
Appreciate the offer.
I
couldn't pass up putting this on the calendar.
Well, and we always joke too about how our relationship is basically like we hang out and drink, like we party is kind of like our relationship. And I was like, I like that about it. Like I see you whenever I see you, it's at an exciting event, and we just hang out and talk.
Sometimes there's coffee, but usually it's more of a social.
Yeah, maybe there'll be coffee later. Yeah. Well, I don't want to interrupt the elk conversation. You guys can continue the conversation. I'm going to get some stuff out and actually make us a drink. How's that sound?
I'm game.
Yeah. Speaking of games. Yeah. No, I mean, we were just talking about the beginning of the school year getting started, and it's been hot, but like those first few that week when it got cool, it was just like, those cool nights.
Oh, it was amazing.
Getting darker a little bit, just a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a good time of year. I love this time of year.
We ran north last weekend, just mowed the lawn, etc. And some of the leaves are turning, and it's like, it's hard to think that far forward because it's just been so crazy and chaotic of late. But it's just flying by.
Well, and then we get the frickin' whatever's happening over the last week and this week, the corn sweats.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Whoever thought that would be a thing? No. Like how much?
Yeah. Something like 3,000 gallons
per acre. Yeah. Which is your pool? Would
Well,
you say?
It's like here's a perspective.
5,000?
Yeah, I heard like 4,000 or whatever. But I'm like, I have a little, above ground pool, 16-foot diameter thing. I'm like, that's 5,000 gallons. So that in the air per acre.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
It blows my mind. So I'm going to be making a Boulevardier. It's like my favorite go-to drink. I've been making them. I made them earlier in the week for us.
With the scale.
With a scale. I want to make sure that we get the right amounts. Are you familiar with the Manhattan? You probably are.
Sure.
So bourbon and sweet vermouth, and in this case, Carpano Antica, which is like the best. That's the one you got to get. But a Boulevardier also has Campari, so it's a little bit orange, a little bit bitter, which is kind of fun. So that's what we're going to be making today. So we don't have any tough questions. There's not really any questions. We just kind of have a conversation. But I would like you to introduce yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. Do I look at you? Or
you can look at me or him. Yeah.
So my name is Sam Blahnik.
Grew
up in West Bend, Wisconsin. Actually, I was born in Iowa, but grew up in West Bend, Wisconsin. My parents moved from Davenport to West Bend to work for the Gale Company. My father did. So that's what brought us just north of Milwaukee. Although all my relatives are from Kewaunee County, just south of Door County, right on Lake Michigan. Went to school there, ended up going back to Iowa for college. I guess that was fortuitous. Went there for baseball to play at Iowa State. When in Rome, I studied agricultural economics. So I'm giving you the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
But studied agriculture, which brought me back to Madison area after college. I had a job for the State Department of Agriculture, which was sweet.
Is that where you first learned about corn sweats?
So my godmother had a Hereford farm, so up in Kewaunee County. So I spent a couple summers, not by choice, doing farm chores. So I learned about the sweats. I don't know if it was the corn sweats, but a lot of
different sweats.
Hard work on the farm. But loved agriculture, loved that tied to the economy, and just people are more genuine, it seems, in that industry. But while working at the State Department of Ag, I got to do a bunch of cool projects, one of which was working with the International Agribusiness Center. They sent me to Guadalajara for a food show, which is where I met my now wife by happen chance through mutual friends. So we crossed paths and did long distance to the extreme. And I share that only because as a recent college grad working for state government, I didn't make any money and I had no vacation. So I left state government to work for a buddy at Baker Tilly when it was still Virgil Krause. So that kind of spurred on my business development or sales mindset. So for 14 years, I was at Baker Tilly and did sales. That got to be kind of a,
You know Dan Zellner?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Worked with Dan and Jordan, his brother-in-law. But yep, spent many years there. And then when it got to be kind of a tough travel gig, when I started having all the kids at home, left there and went to the public sector. I went to Village of DeForest doing economic development.
That's right.
Did that for 5 years, got vested with the state retirement system, and then I got tapped to go to 1848 construction. So as part of their succession plan and ownership, I joined up there in 2019. Our former CEO retired in 2020. I bought in March of 21. So that's kind of brought me to my current and hopefully permanent profession where we do construction, commercial, retail, industrial.
Had you planned to be an owner? Was that like an idea? Like, hey, I could be a part of this company.
So I had a setup at the Village, and knowing what my equation would have been to get to retirement, I was in an okay spot. So I actually thought about staying in public government and maybe becoming, maybe looking at doing an administrator role or something. But when Jim Anderson came and tapped me on the shoulder, he said, would you ever be interested in coming back to the private sector? And I said, well, maybe, but I have to think about this. And ownership was one of those caveats that if I'm going to go back in, devote the time and effort, the relationship networking, all that, that you put into it, I'd like it to be something that was kind of more of a long-term gain and benefit for my family for the sacrifice on the front end of the relationship. So it was part of that, transition back to the private sector.
And do you view yourself as an entrepreneur, or like you obviously have a title like VP. Let's see, what is it? VP of is it VP of something, or you're vice president? And you do what's that?
So no, I mean, it's kind of funny because it's vice president, comma business development.
Okay, that's right.
Because we have 3 owners of the company.
Yeah.
So we have our CEO and then 2 vice presidents.
Okay.
So, but I get to do the fun stuff, the business development. So that's the networking, the golf,
Yeah.
the schmoozing side of relationships. So, yep. So our CEO is the head of project management and estimating. We have a vice president in charge of operations, so that's overseeing all the staff. And then I get to do kind of the business development, the relationship side. So we kind of all offset each other.
Did you start there early in your career, or did that because you said you kind of were in the sales and loved the sales?
It kind of evolved after. I didn't see myself as a salesperson, as a sales guy.
Yeah.
But I always liked interacting with people and just having that meaningful relationship. So I've joked that I'm a pretty poor salesman in that I get vested emotionally.
Yeah.
Versus looking for the slick oil sales, transactional kind of a kind of a person.
We've been talking about this a lot recently in our company, talking about sales and how. I mean, I don't know if this is unique to our industry. I think we started from the standpoint of like, I think this is unique in production and marketing, but I actually don't know that it's that unique. And it's this idea of like, sales. Yeah, I don't like sales. I don't know if I want to do that or whatever. And it's like, it's actually just having relationships with people.
Yeah.
Because, what we have in our mind is actually the picture in our mind of a bad salesman.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what was in our mind when we're like, I don't think I like sales.
Yeah.
Because we've all experienced that person who's just like, how do we get you into this,
oh my gosh,
or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and you're just like, dude, leave me alone. Like I was trying to talk to a person and now you're like coming after me.
Yep.
And at some point you have to negotiate the deal or whatever. But people want to like work with people that get them. That's what we always say. It was just like, well, we can figure all this out. Like we can talk about the details and adjust things however you need. Let's just, do you feel like we're on the same page? Do you feel like we get each other? Do you feel like we would be a good partner? If so, let's do it.
Right. And people do appreciate that genuine approach versus being pitched something. And there's a time and a place for that too.
Yeah.
But I agree. It's the value in the relationship versus, you have to have something that you're selling that you believe in, and a product that adds value and benefit to them. But absolutely.
Well, and I think it's maybe it is unique, not necessarily just to marketing, but to industries where the project is like a big thing and a long-term thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to make an assumption here connecting to like construction because like,
yeah, it's probably not small.
You're like, once we're in, we're going to be working together and talking to each other for a long time. So we better, it's not like a one-off.
Right.
I just sold you a thing and now I'm leaving and,
Yeah, and the transactional, turnover time or whatever the period can be elongated, but then also if you look at capital construction projects, not everybody is building new buildings every year. We're doing a tenant improvement build out. So it's that long-term relationship. I think the number that I heard was once every 5 years, companies on average will look at doing some sort of a capital construction project. So how do you stay tied to that individual or group? And then how are you front of mind when they go to that next round of looking for that resource? So it's a long-term play, and it is all relationship. People want to work with people they enjoy dealing with.
Yeah, yeah. So I have known you. I knew you before this, and now here, before the 1848, and before the ownership. My question is along the lines of ownership. So how, how's that perspective, and how has that been different for you? Just like stepping into that world of like, okay, I own this thing, and I kind of have flexibility, but also I have responsibility. And now my flexibility is like, I'm my own problem with my schedule. When the family's like, hey, can we do this? You're like, technically I could say yes, but also I need to say no.
Right.
It's a loaded question.
I think, and Ryan had asked before about entrepreneurial mindset. And I will say that I have silent invested and actively invested in 2 startups before, one that's still going and one that's not. And coming in on board with this company, it was tested and proven, has great resources and references in the market. So to transition into ownership here was a lot less uncertain and a lot less scary than some of the earlier ventures that I had done years ago. I'd like to think that everybody who works for companies has pride and takes self-interest in representing who they are and the company and all that. It is different when you sign on the dotted line and you've got responsibilities about making payroll and about HR issues and just the way that you try and have intentionality about messaging with employees and other folks outside of the company. So in some ways it was an easy, smooth transition. In some ways it was, exciting because it was a heightened level, more risk, more reward. But it's, it comes with the goods far outweigh the bads, I would say.
Yeah.
And sorry, your camera was down for a minute. I just fixed your camera, fixed the drink. Now I can hang out and not work is the hope.
Not on camera.
Yeah,
So.
no, it's great. You were not on camera for a little bit there, but we got it all sorted out. So this is our Boulevardier. Again, it's a Manhattan with Campari. So cheers. Thanks for coming and hanging with us, man.
Thank you.
It's a good one, man.
Was I supposed to just chug the whole thing?
Oh, I hope
Did you
not.
get it? As I'm laying on the floor.
Yeah, this would have gone very differently from how you expected. So kind of to that point too of ownership and being an employee and things like that, it's interesting with employees. I don't know how many you manage or if you manage, but trying to get them to have ownership and buy-in while not being owners, right, is an interesting conundrum. And I think we have fantastic staff who are exceptional in that they are not kind of all the tropes of millennials or Gen Z, where, in 2 months, if they don't have complete fulfillment, they're like, I'm out of here, right? To do stuff that maybe they don't want to do all this stuff, but they do it and they do it well, but then they get some ownership and then they can take that and do it better than you could have expected. And I think we've been fortunate, but I don't know do you manage anybody or have anybody like?
So I joke in my career, I've really never managed anybody. I've managed processes, I've managed RFP responses, I've managed sales pipelines and all this, but I haven't had direct reports. So I've had to do, evaluations, etc. So no was the short answer. I am a manager of business development and not of personnel. Although, everybody kind of, we're a small shop, so everybody reports and interacts.
And you're still one of the owners, so.
Well, and the comment about sales before was interesting to me because really everybody is selling your company in some way. And whether in our firm, whether you're the office manager, a project manager, or even the executive assistant, your interactions represent the company.
Yes.
And we have leads and actually close deals and relationships from every resource in our company, including the folks out in the field that have, they have trusted relationships and people that rely on them. So when you have that and you bring that lead opportunity relationship to the company, that goes a long way, and that long-term relationship is, to me, that's why I feel like everybody should take pride in ownership, and everybody is selling. It's just a different
That's a
level.
really good point. Like for all types of work, and we should talk about that in our company, like everything you do is going to reflect back on us somehow, So when you're in that conversation or when you send that message, we don't want you to be crazy about how you're thinking about it. But the idea, like you're saying, that it is all marketing to some degree, it is all sales to some degree, and to at least be cognizant, I think is a good start.
Well, in the world of work I don't know if the world of work is different, but the mindset is different. Like, because I try to have some empathy with employees, because we want that mindset. But as a non-owner, like, are you up at night, thinking about things? Maybe not. And maybe that's okay. Maybe not everyone should be up at night, but the difference in mindset that I'm talking about is that there was a time when people, whether they were owners or not, were thinking about, I'm going to work here for 20, 30 years and then retire.
Yep.
And now the mindset's very different. It's like, oh, we'll see how long, and I'm going to see about the next thing, and, moving on and doing that thing or whatever. Like, it's rare to find people who are committed. It's tough to like balance that because, you get that team aspect, but then,
And you hear the term loyalty, and
Yeah.
I don't always think that it's someone being disloyal if they take another opportunity that really is the best for them and for their family.
Right.
So I think, it's always easier to retain folks than to, onboard and newly acclimate new employees, but also can't slight somebody for an opportunity that they got to better themselves, their personal status or family or position in life. So how do you keep that, opportunity in front of them while they're still at your company?
I love that reflection on loyalty too, because it's like, well, are you disloyal when you leave? No, we don't want to have that language, but we want the best of you while you're here,
Right.
And then when you leave, we wish you the best, and you should give the best of that somewhere else, but not to tie it to loyalty for those reasons.
Yeah. And I don't think it's a hierarchical separation of owners and non-owners.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have heard, ideas like you do an exit interview with your new employees or along the way to see kind of a check on the pulse of how things are going. And if you wait till somebody's on the way out the door and they're disgruntled and upset and didn't have a good experience, that's a missed opportunity for something you could be improving along the way. So not that we're great at doing that, but we try to give everybody opportunity to speak and have open, candid dialogue and all that. But again, it's every shop is different, and the way that culture is a little bit different.
Well, and the fact that you have multiple owners, so you're, in a similar situation. We have 3 partners, and I think that's healthy. When it was funny going through school, we did like a consulting. We got a free consulting with like the UW Business School. Would do these projects and give you opinions and stuff. And their opinion was
our business had a consultation with them.
Yes.
Yeah.
We went and did that.
Yeah.
And they evaluated things, and they're like, partnerships don't work. And there was just like this such a strong opinion, like partnerships don't work. Certainly not multiple members, but they were just very even against. And it was like, oh well, I guess if you're looking at it from a lens of like no humility, like people not like working together, and like they are hard because you kind of like grind on each other. But I think it's healthy because,
for the record, our ownership group does not grind on each other. You guys, no, I'm just kidding.
I don't know what that's like at all. Yeah.
in a good way. But like where I'm going with this is just that I think it's possible in a sole proprietorship, especially if somebody's not, well grounded and having, people give feedback and opinions, to just be oblivious to the things that are going on, or to like that feedback, or things aren't going very well, but you just don't know. You're just going.
Yeah.
when you have partners, it's like three people are all in our case, three people are all evaluating things, and like, what should we change? How should we do this? We have difference of opinion, and we have to like debate our point to get to the
And
best
it
one.
used to be probably before last year, before this past or this current year, it probably used to be my biggest frustration, and still one of our biggest assets. I think just very different perspectives. And so we'd come at it from different ways, and I might want to go one way and John another or Scott another. And, then you'd have to try to figure out how to communicate through that in a way that it's not like a marriage. Like we could just, be gone tomorrow if we wanted. But that idea that we're going to work through it has always been one of our greatest strengths. And then over the last year, we've started some new initiatives in the company. One of them is, entrepreneurial mindset. I don't know what the book is. EOS traction right there. And that's been really great because it kind of takes the emotionality out of your work and your discourse in a good way. So it's not like, we don't like Sam's idea, or they don't like my idea and they don't like me. It's like, no, they just have a different opinion, and that opinion is just as valid. So for me, at least, it's been very helpful to have a methodology on how we interact and how we set goals and how we work towards them and how we set rocks and goals for ourselves and do that for the company. And it's like taken like almost all my frustration away. Like even when I'm like, ooh, I have a really good idea. I think it's awesome. Let's go. But I'm going to put it into the process with you guys, and, we're not going to do it. Okay. I see why, and we've agreed to let this be like a mediator to some degree. Sure. So it's nice.
And if everybody's moving to the same common goal,
yeah,
it's understood and appreciated to have the different perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was, I wanted to go after we got back from the National Eucharistic Congress. I was like, there's another conference next month, and it's for like ICSC. It's like the fundraisers for parishes, essentially. And I was like, that's a great opportunity. The guys were like, yeah, it is. We need to follow up on the opportunities that we already had. And I was like, you're right. I was like, that other thing that we did that I was really excited about too. And it was less of, me not getting my way and more of like us working together towards our goal. And that was a really great thing.
And maybe it's not all that like, maybe
I don't think it's profound. I think it's simple, and other people probably have it figured out.
It's a system that, and we always joke too that it's like, well, in a creative company, there's a lot of emotions flying around in a creative company. Maybe it's the same in other companies. It's like could be.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities, and the business owners, small or large, that I've interacted with on peer networking groups or just the ability to bounce best practices and ideas and thoughts and tools that people are using, there are a lot of similarities across business lines, just like you're describing. So it doesn't have to be a creative, content company versus construction company versus widgets or whatever it is. But there's a lot of just that mindset, I think, that flows.
So you're vice president, development.
Yep.
So there's probably things.
I found this on the web.
Thanks, Siri. See, I love Apple so much.
Can't take them anywhere.
When things work together, they work so well. But Siri is the single worst Apple product ever. It is so trash. It is, like that. Like, why is it doing that?
I'm surprised you didn't change the voice at least. They have a different accent.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it's like a British lady. My wife's like, why is it British? It's like, I don't know, it's hot. My computer shouldn't be British. But so VP, there's probably some different roles, responsibilities than director of development or development director or whatever. What's that like at your company? Especially you buying in as another partner. As a junior member,
a
like
literal vested interest. But as a board member, yes, I am a lower ranking minority owner. So as we establish positions in our board meetings and who does the minutes and stuff like that, it is kind of like you're putting in your time.
Is the board separate than president, VP?
So it can be per our bylaws, but right now it's one and the same.
Okay.
So but I mean, our CEO is 4 years older than me. Our other VP is 2 years older than me. So we're close in age, relatively speaking. So we talked about what is that runway lead time of us together, and what does that succession look like? How,
Right.
because our company from 2002 to 2015 was another design build firm. And then in 2016, starting off the year, the Wisconsin folks branched away from that kind of mothership. And because we were Wisconsin assets, Wisconsin projects, Wisconsin, personnel, we rebranded as 1848. Here, Wisconsin became a state. Everybody picks up on that. You can tell who paid attention in fifth grade or not.
That's great.
But that was by happen chance because we couldn't find another company name that wasn't either taken or had a domain on the website that you couldn't get or was in litigation in St. Louis or something like that. So all the names that those owners threw out were kind of just, 5 meetings later, they couldn't come up with anything. And then saw the Wisconsin flag, blue background, white lettering, 1848. So we kind of, took off of that. And completely by happen chance, being a numeric company name, we're at the top of the list for the vendor listing on conferences.
Hey,
On
that's
everything,
great,
yeah. I mean, we're B, so we're just 2 letters down.
Right there.
Yeah.
Top. That's all you
It's
small
genius.
business owners out there. If you
Yes.
haven't named your company yet, look for numbers or A, B, and letters.
Yeah.
So sorry, you asked the question. I don't think I even got.
Oh, just like what does that look like at your guys' company? Like, did they already have methodologies that they're like, here's how we make decisions?
Yeah, so I think there was a lot of learned experience from a lot of the folks who were together in the 1990s. There was a construction company, and if you look at the circles, I mean, all networking circles, but especially Madison area, are small, and there's a lot of overlap, and people kind of meander in their careers. So our folks have been together for 20 years or better. Some of the folks in the field and the office. The way that the intentionality behind the structure, we try to limit our overhead, so we don't have any architects or engineers on staff. We manage the projects, outsource everything in the middle, and then we do our finish carpentry, rough and finish carpentry out in the field in-house. We don't self-perform a lot of items that some other bigger GCs do. The benefit is we can ebb and flow and not have a lot of overhead that we have to tie into a lot of the projects. So we can be creative. But again, going back to your question, there was intentionality about how the board structure was set up, so that we didn't have a lot of overlap in whose roles and responsibilities and who was going to be CEO. And the company was brought up, in 2016. The other company had some debt anchors tied to it. So when it was kind of reborn in 2016, it's been structured intentionally so that we don't have to deal with that kind of investment development risk.
And how many years have you been there now?
I've been there since 2019. So 5 years.
So but just a couple years after that restructuring.
Yeah.
Is that so? We've been around for about 17 years, and the interesting thing is like we've been successfully stumbling our way through everything. And I say it in that way because like we didn't learn from somebody else. That's maybe the only thing. Had there been opportunity, I would have tried to change. Our learning was, calling up Rich from Tilt and being like, "Hey, this is happening. Here's what we're thinking. What do you think?" Like another older agency guy in town.
I got a little bit of learning, but it was, brief.
Like typically any type of apprenticeship, like even like these the young folk, we're like, "Hey, just come work for us." Like, you'll learn something in school and that can be great. In production, I encourage a lot of people not to go to school, just to start working, because after 4 years, you could probably be doing a role that you want. Whereas we just got a message the other day, like from a student who's graduating or just graduated. And he's like, "Hey, looking to help out, blah, blah, blah. I'm a director." What did he say? It was like, "I'm a director of cinematographer." My background.
Directing and cinematography.
Yeah. You're like, "No, it's
not." My background's in college and high school.
Yeah. You're like a kid who knows how to do nothing. So you would need to be trained. So I can't hire you for any of the roles you want to do. So thinking more about that kind of pathway, like we didn't have that in business. And so we just kind of made it up and we were successful in what we made up. And then Scott came on and kind of brought a lot of that corporate kind of understanding as well, which really helped to solidify a lot of what we were doing and kind of maybe have a better foundation. But there's still a lot that we still do that we designed and developed. and it's a lot different kind of than the corporate world, but it's a lot of what we're talking about, and you know what we don't want sales to be. You know, like I had a phone call yesterday with a client, and I was like, I want to talk to you because I want to pick your brain about this project, and there might be a pitch. And then when we got to the pitch, she's like, well, tell me more. And I was like, well, I don't want to be pitchy. Like, I just want your advice. And she just kept grilling me and grilling me and grilling me. And I was like, this is cool. Cause like, I honestly wanted her advice, but she wanted my pitch, you know, because of it.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
If you guys were to go back, I mean, I don't actually, I'm sure you shared it with me, you know, the since the inception of the company, but I mean, if you were to go back, would you have done anything different with the way you've evolved over time? I mean, you talked about leaning on resources and calling and tapping on the shoulder if somebody might have better.
Well, the butterfly effect, like if it was different, I don't know that I would have, if I would have little Ambrose, who's my 7th, you know, so I don't think I would change it, but I recommend other people do it differently than what I did.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would do would have been to add more like business learning, because like we joke that like, well, we made a company to, you know, fund our filmmaking habit, you know, like and we just wanted to do it, and it was like, well, I don't know the business side, but we'll figure that out. And so, you know, that was a lot of like work to figure out things that are probably like, oh yeah, this is, you know, we eventually reinvented something that was like, oh yeah, that's a pretty basic way to do that.
Yeah.
You know, whatever it was, is like,
Yeah.
Okay. But it's a hard question, because I really like a lot of what we do and a lot of what we've done. And I can certainly say that early on that our success could be attributed to the fact that we didn't have the existing systems. You know, we were
not the same.
We were
Yeah.
kind of getting started and growing in the post-financial crash era. And so we were starting with like lower cost equipment, we didn't have overhead, you know, really. And new technology was coming out, the DSLRs, you know, the DSLR revolution. This is all internal industry stuff, but like we went from ENG cameras to, you know, those, like it's a photo camera that has a nice lens on it. So suddenly it looks better. It doesn't look like a soap opera. It looks more like what I see at the movies. That's the simple way to explain it. Well, we got into that right away. Another established shop, like, well, they've got 60, 100, 200 grand invested in cameras and stuff. Like, well, we got to use what we have. And so we were able to get in with like subjectively better quality, you know, imagery, and also HD. It's so funny. Like this is when we were coming in right at like HD was just kind of becoming more of a thing. So we were not pricing like standard def or HD prices. We were like, no, just all HD. Why would you ever do lower quality? Yeah. Like, no, and if your price needs to be that, we'll just do that. But we're going to use, you know. So we came in and we really started like carving out a space for ourselves, you know. And then all these years later, now we have had to sort of live that other side of it. Like, okay, we have things built out, and as the overhead changes, we have to adapt. And we can talk more about that story. There's some specific conclusions we've come to from that,
which we're doing now.
Yeah, but it's hard. Like, what would I do different? Like, I don't know. I mean, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Just like you said, but like the challenges are the things that have made us good. Like doing it our own way and reinventing it has been good. It's what you hear about and read about when like a company becomes stagnant, you know, because they're not inventing anything. They're not trying. They're not pushing. They're not, you know.
I wouldn't do anything different, but I would tell someone like, hey, you want to get into the industry? Like, just start doing things, you know, like after you finish your required high school, just start filming on your phone even. Like that whole, and I don't know if this is necessarily the way to go, but that whole influencer or YouTuber, you know, kind of course, like so many people just start filming dumb things and it's entertaining and they then make $50,000 a month making those things. Now, where they all eventually want to go is something simple and sustainable and more real, which is like a production company or longer form content or whatever. But cutting your chops on something like that is like us cutting our chops kind of in the wedding industry, which, you know, burns everybody out, but you learn a lot and you learn how to be effective and efficient and all those things.
By that you mean photography, not by getting married, right?
Not by getting married. Yeah. Like everyone in the photography or in the marriage industry, you know, there's a shelf life. You can handle it and you can be wildly successful, but then you're like, this is killing me. Like my wife stopped the wedding dresses a couple of years ago because it was just brutal. Successful, but brutal.
She's transitioned to house remodels, right?
House remodels, but then she got pregnant. I don't know how that happened. And then her brain stopped working, and we don't have any cabinet doors on any of our kitchen things. So
They're overrated in you.
I know, but now Ambrose is getting into all those. So her new thing is cookies, which is, I don't know if you've seen any of those. Your wife might have, like on Facebook or something.
Maybe.
Yeah, but not to be a business, because like when it becomes a business and there's a demand, like it's a different mental thing.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, maybe that's another way to go too. How do you kind of view your job? Like, do you like stop at like 6 o'clock? You're like, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to think about this anymore. Or do you constantly think about it? Or
I feel like society in general is hard to shut down anything anymore. And people want responsiveness. They want to know that no matter what time they're reaching out to you, that it's been received. And at least you've acknowledged that you've gotten something and you'll get back to them. So I think that's a problem in trying to check out and just get mental sanity. I don't mean that specific to our company or to construction. I just think that that's a generalization that it's harder to check out and get away and not feel like you're falling behind when you have 300 emails waiting for you after being 2 days out of the office. Back to your question, so many of the leads and opportunities that seem to be tied to like my effort are personal ties. So if I'm out, and I'm not pitching friends or whatever else, but if you're out and in conversation and somebody hears, you know, you're in the construction world, well, how much roughly is a price per square foot on this type of project? Well, you're right there giving some valued information. And if you can provide them, you know, whatever info that they're going to come back and share with somebody or whatever it is, I don't feel like you're ever completely off.
Yeah.
Which is a tough perspective to be.
Yeah. Would you say you're an extroverted person or introverted?
That's interesting.
Like, where do you get,
so growing
how do you
up,
recharge?
I was super introverted. I grew up very embarrassed as a child. My parents split when I was 5. Won't go into all those details, but I grew up very introverted.
Sure.
And fortunately, through sports and other father figures, I was like pulled out of my shell, not by choice. So with that, you know, I had buddies that would joke that I'd go talk to their parents instead of hanging out with them when we'd be at high school parties or whatever. So I think just the ability to interrelate with people seems like you're an extrovert, but I think actually I'm an introverted type person. And I love going up to the cabin, you know, fishing, just that quiet, reserved reflection time, sitting in the deer stand. We don't have many deer up there. There's a lot of wolves and bears. So there's a lot of time to just sit and reflect and think. But to answer your question, I think it's fun to interrelate with people, but I feel introverted often.
Yeah, and I think, so I relate to that a lot. And my wife loves to tell people that, like, no, he's introverted. Like when we get home, he just needs to like put his head under a pillow and be alone. But where was I going with that? Like the intentionality. I think that's maybe what introverts, no shade on our extroverts, but I think that's what introverts really strive for too, is like real intentional conversation. And that's what we try to do. And so like when I'm getting into something with somebody, it's going to be real intentional and I'm going to be really hyper-focused on them, which I think in terms of marketing and sales in the good way, not in the bad way, is an asset because then somebody's like, yeah, I like that person. I do want to work with them. I may not even have a project now because like our project lead time is kind of silly. Like, you know, it's not somebody buying a widget, like same thing with you guys. Like it might be something that they need to do in a year and then it's going to take a few months to go. And so just being around them and being a positive influence around them, I think is useful.
point. That's a meaningful, intentional interaction. It's not superficial and
Mm-hmm.
snake oil sales kind of a thing. And people pick up on that.
Right.
Whether you're buying a car or something, we've all been approached by those.
I was trying to fix something on the Yellow Pages yesterday. And it was like our listing wasn't there, or there's some issue with our listing, and I couldn't capture the listing and update our stuff. And it's just good for link and search engine optimization. So I wanted to fix it. Got on the phone with somebody who's really nice. He was helping me fix it. And then he's like, all right, yeah, well, what else are you looking to do? And I was like, well, there's another page that I want to get our stuff on. And he's like, okay, well, about how many leads are you trying to get a month? And I was like, I don't know. Like, they're big projects. So like 1, 5, like, I don't know. I was like, we have like 30 ongoing clients, with a bunch of smaller clients in a given year. So we don't need a ton. It's like, okay, blah, blah, blah. What other type of work do you do? This? It's like, well, how many clients of those do you need? And I was like, where's this going? Mm-hmm. Well, there's this marketing agency that bought Yellow Pages. Oh. And so he's like, yeah, no, we can help you. We can get you onto that page. Let me just set you up with a blah, blah, blah specialist tomorrow. And I was like, okay. So, and then afterwards, I was like, no, I don't want to be marketed to. Like, that was gross. Yeah. Like, I was trying to solve a problem, and then you're like, yeah, what was it going to take to get you into one of these things, today?
So I was thinking about the work, always on work thing. And I think it was specifically, I don't know, maybe I just have to embrace it, because I always say, like, oh, I hate talking about COVID. I'm going to try, someday we won't have to talk about COVID all the time. Maybe we will have to, because grandpas talk about World War II. And so like someday we'll be like, well, back in COVID,
yeah,
So I had this thought about like that always on thing. Part of the reason that I think it's a problem, part of the reason that it's more of a problem, is because was it ever different when everyone was farming? You were always on, because there's always something to be done. But your work is at home, and your coworkers are your family, and maybe a few people that live around you or something. Now certainly the way that I grew up, like work is separate from home. I get home and I leave work at work, and home is home. So then if I'm on at work, if I'm having to respond, then I'm like leaving the family. I'm leaving that environment or those conversations to address work. And it doesn't work
in a whole separate community to some degree.
Yeah, it doesn't work with everyone, and it doesn't work with every family. But like that idea of like doing more together with your family. And there's a couple people around here. There's one over there that's related to somebody else, and there's one that comes in.
Claire will be in tomorrow. Yeah.
Like it can be challenging, right? Like we're not trying. We don't want to have nepotism. We want to have
100%
the right people. Nepotism. But like.
Why own a business if we can't be nepotistical?
But it's better. Like, then you don't feel so much about that always on thing, because it's like, this is what our family, this is what we are doing together. Right. Instead of like, okay, that's that, and that's the, and the kids need time, and they need to have their books read before bedtime and stuff. But like, like, oh, if it's a family effort. And that was easier when it was farming, because it was just like, oh, well, I got in from the field, and now we got to like take care of the animal chores, and everyone's out there.
Yeah. How do you deal with intentionality with your family?
I don't do well with it, because I grew up just having to take care of all my own stuff. And so I don't disseminate well. And my wife reminds me of that. So we have chickens. I don't do well on like, here's your chores, here's the list, get this stuff done. I just expect my children to be, thoughtful, courteous, respectful, and they
come out of the womb
chores, right?
Yeah.
So when I come home and the dishes aren't done, it's like, well, somebody should have thought about that, but they're still good kids. They just don't always think about it.
And your wife's also like, I kept them alive. You're welcome.
But talking about the farming life, and so I think a lot of that, role models by parents, the kids don't see that necessarily these days. Or how parents interact with other adults, maybe in a professional setting or whatever it is. It's kind of robbing them a little bit of that example. Whereas years ago, that was something that was just in the upbringing. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but there's some of that seems to be lost. You referenced
Some
COVID. I
value.
used to laugh because you could not have one conversation or meeting without somebody referencing COVID for like, years after that. And here we are today, still talking about it. But for us, I only speaking for my family, we felt like we were a farm family from like 300 years ago. We were together. We, got up, we ate, we prayed, we spent time together. You were just with each other. And yeah, there were fights and there were disagreements, but we bonded even closer during that time.
Such a different flavor.
It really was interesting. Now, from a business sense, I didn't enjoy it, but from a family, just alignment, I actually enjoyed a lot of those moments.
I loved it. Obviously people got hurt and that sucks. And I don't love that part of it, but the rest of it, like I'm such a homebody, such an introvert. And it was like, we don't have to meet anybody. Nobody else is like hanging out. Like we did have like the darts we're like part of our pod people and Carolyn Averill. And so like within a few months, we're like, yeah, we're just hanging out with you guys and no one else, like somebody's going to snitch on you for going to the grocery store, but we're going to still hang out. But that intentionality was back. Whereas now, like, I think the thing that I struggle most with is like, there's 100 things that I'm dealing with. And some of them are very specifically my own tasks. And then 60% of them are other people's things that I need to provide feedback or help or whatever with. And there's all those things. And then I go home and they're still all spinning in my head. Like, how do I set that aside? And so there's another book around here, Deep Work by Cal Newport. I think it's over there, that has some mechanisms to be able to set the workday aside. But you can always come back to it. Or like, I might be like, I'm going to do this until the kids go to bed. I can set it aside, not worry about it, focus on the family. And then at 8:00, I got to work more on this proposal because we have to review tomorrow or something.
Because going home is almost like halftime. You've done your first half and then regroup and be present and be the best that you can for those moments at home. But it is hard if you had a rough day or something's lingering or the client is chirping in your ear and you can't, get that out of your head to just try and disconnect from that.
But there's a few different, so Father Eric Nielsen gave a talk one time and he was talking about,
I'm going to go grab some other libations just for
he was talking
hydration.
About like, go home for dinner, was his thing. He's like, I realize that you might have to work more or whatever. Even if you have to go back into the office, or if you can, do more work from home or whatever. He was like, his advice was like, go home for dinner, reconnect, do the dinner, and then go back to work if you need to. Yeah. Another cool perspective I heard is a friend of mine. Well, do you know Joe Bugney?
Sure.
Yeah. So he's a big evangelist for the Golden Hour, what's it called? Optimist. It'll come to me. There's this. It's a podcast. The Golden Hour is a podcast, and it's this like work method. It's all about kind of reframing and stuff. But the Golden Hour is what they like focus on is like having like it could be more than an hour, but like having this very productive period of time where you're like focusing. It's kind of like deep work or whatever. But to reframe that even one step further, this friend was like, I realized that I needed to make my golden hour that first hour that I got home. He was like, I'm doing stuff at work all day or whatever. Like the time that I am needed where I have to be like on, and what's way more important for my, soul or whatever, and for my family is like the hour that I get home. Talking about that. What's the Golden Hour podcast?
Optimal work. Yeah.
Anyway, the Joe Bugney was.
Yeah. Do you know Joe Bugney?
Yeah.
He's so big on optimal work. Every time I see him.
But he was actually talking about, it's similar to the deep work idea and similar to these things, but his reframe was like, I need to make the golden hour that first hour that I get home, and that's interesting, and that's a good challenge probably for most men or most working parents. Is like, instead of like getting home and being like, this has been a horrible day. I do not want to speak to any of you right now, or stressful or whatever. Instead, like, make that the golden hour, and then after that you can.
What I really need to do is, my wife has told me as much. I should listen. She's like, that several hours after you work out are like your best time of the day. And it really is like, and I work out early morning and then take the kids in and then come to work, and like best hours of the day. Like I'm like happy-go-lucky, bopping around, whatever. People are still groggy and I've been up for 4 hours. But to the idea of that golden hour, like maybe I start work really early and then I work out at like 3, and then dinner time, I'm just like on, still get the good work time in. But there's something to like the physicality and the endorphins, and, you played sports and all of that.
It is funny to come home and like, whether it's my 7-year-old or I have a kid with special needs who's 16, and they'll say, "Hey, how was work? How was your day?" And I don't even think they know what they're asking, but they want to see my reaction, and if it's like, if I'm struggling or frustrated or not responding how they hope I do, then that impacts, like the next 15 minutes, half hour. And further, so Jacob, he's 16 now, he has Down syndrome, but he has a knack for picking up on people's persona. And, he aligns with some people more than others, but he also really is in tune with, like my wife and I, when we're grumpy or frustrated or upset or good. And we have to lead him through that with that intentionality. But he always talks about going to the cabin and loves going to the cabin, loves fishing, loves four-wheeling. I don't even know if he really likes it or he knows that I'm a better me when I'm up there. And so we'll go up there.
That's the best time, though.
Like
yeah.
Happy time.
Yeah.
And it's just for me. And so I think about that. Like, is that bad parenting other times? Or is it good that he gets some exposure to that? But it's just interesting to me that some people pick up on those cues, and kids especially.
Well, and there's, like parenting is so crazy. I'd love to see like a parenting through the ages book, because like we're like, oh, we're so modern, we know so much, and like, what are some of the things that we say, like love and logic and reason and things like that. And I'm like, but you just need to do the fucking thing. Like just pick that up or just do your chore. Like I will explain.
So. Yeah.
We will discuss why afterwards. Right now, I'm so mad that you chose not to do it and then chose to do something else. But it's interesting thinking about like our parents' generation or their parents and like the different parenting styles. And it probably changes in generations, but I don't think anything's probably truly novel or this idea of like caring about our kids' emotions. Now I feel like we need to come back a little bit on the other side and be like, everything we do can't be geared towards our kids' emotions. Like that, I feel like we've gone a little too far, and I certainly probably still need to be more empathetic. But that idea where it's like, no, they can hear, a hard word, and they can deal with that as long as we are not intentionally condescending or intentionally harmful. And like with one of my kids, my wife told me this. She was like, go after them. And I was like, you can have a hard word or you can have a correcting word, but you got to go after them, in 10 minutes or something like that. And it was like her experience growing up with a more domineering dad who didn't go after her. So she felt like left out, or whatever. And certainly still loved, but like forgotten.
Right.
She felt.
You can coddle too much or allow without that intentional, intervention or whatever it would be. But
right, the intentionality. And so like now,
other parents or school teachers or, everybody has to be on such high edge these days because no one wants to overstep that bounds. But again, I think it's important that kids respect other adults and see how their parents interact with them. But sorry.
Just going on the intentionality idea and like Jacob picking up on like your emotions, and he's happier when you're happier.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And like, we got into this coddling world where we're like, I'm going to spend 4 hours putting my kids to bed and I'm going to read these stories and do this and I'm not going to have a life. That's not good for your kids. That's not good for you, obviously. But like, that's the other side that we've gone way too far on. And I've kind of realized like, no, the things that I enjoy, like if the kids see me having joy with that, they will have joy from that. And they might even like some of that eventually. So like movies are huge in my house.
Yep.
Like kids love movies and they'll like use all their money to go to the movie theater and watch movies and rewatch stuff. We play like the actor game, like, oh, who's that? That's this, and they're in this and that. And like movies or like video games were those things where it was like, my dad grew up on a farm and I was like, why are you doing all this stuff? Like, this is dumb. And now like I do it and I love it and my kids love it. And I'm like, oh, we can share this together. And like, that's super unique. And I don't have to, I don't know what it is. Like, I hate soccer. I hate running around. My boys love soccer. I'll do it occasionally, but like, I hate this. Let's go do one of the things I love. And they love to do that too, because then I'm in that place and they sense that, or they have a better experience.
Yeah, there's, it's not just the kids. It's like our whole modern culture. Like we have a problem with authority, and everything needs to be justified, or we won't. We won't do it. And so I think the balance that we've tried to strike is like, especially when the older kids explain, like, I will explain this to you when we have like time, but also it's exhausting to me to have to explain that every single time. And just having that, like, it was like this like revelation of like, oh yeah, I can like explain what it is, like how it is that I'm going to do this, and then I will do it from the, like, it's exhausting me to
explain your frustration.
Yeah. And so like I can't do that all the time. And so sometimes I just need you to just do the thing.
Yeah.
And we're not going to do this every time. We can some other time talk about it.
Sure.
And then just setting that up to be like, it's not going to be all one where I'm just like always because I said so, but also sometimes it will be.
Sure.
Because I just don't have time for it or energy. And I don't want you to like debate me all the time.
I was like this years old when I kind of realized that, of like being able to communicate with the family and Monica. Like, I'm really overwhelmed. I can't handle your questions right now. Like, I'll tell my kids that. Or there was like, when we went through this and like, we kind of like, what do we want to do with the business and all that stuff? It was like very emotional. It was like one of the best meetings we've ever had, but it was just super emotional. And at the end of the day, like just regular stuff was happening. And like, I started getting really upset. And then like, I was actually like crying a little bit. And I was like, I just can't handle anything right now. I'm like so emotional. I just need you to like love me and not criticize something, I don't know, some pile that I just made, or, whatever it is. Like, and I was like, oh, you can just communicate stuff like that. Right. You can communicate your emotions. I didn't realize that. That was not a thing I was taught. So I'm okay, bringing a little bit of that softness.
We're a couple generations removed from the,
don't speak.
Grow up on the farm, and it's like, you've received your punishment, and we will never talk about this again. We'll pretend this never happened.
Yeah, the only like relevant communication is that you got a punishment.
Yeah,
like we didn't even talk about it being wrong. You just got a punishment. Yeah, that's crazy, man. And I mean, this is probably true for both of you because I know both of your wives to some degree. But like, just listening to your wives, like, that's hard. But I got to do more of it. Like, she's so smart, and it's that really interesting thing too. Being Catholics, wives submit to your husbands, but what is it? To be under the mission of, what is the mission? To serve your wife and your family as Christ. To die for your family, right? So to give yourself up. Now,
so last weekend, readings in the pew.
Yes.
And I was waiting for the kids to obey your parents, but that wasn't very much. Yeah,
that's right. It was this Sunday.
Symbiotic.
Yeah, but the idea of like, there's a reason we chose our wives, or our wives chose us, and to utilize that. It's. I mean, think about the employee thing to kind of bring it back around. Like, obviously, being married in the Catholic Church, we cannot be unmarried, so we've been married forever. But like, it takes a lot to onboard a wife, or to be married and to figure each other out. Like, she just got married, Alexis did. And I was like, what's your wisdom? Like, you should think about that like every year. Like, what have you learned? Because it changes somewhat. But like, I found that it's like, it's kind of the same stuff. And I need to do better at it. Like early on, it was like, oh yeah, listen in this way, like happy wife, happy life. Ha ha ha. But, when you're trying to lead, when you're trying to help, you're trying your best and it doesn't work, that's when I think we get into trouble. And I hear my wife talking to my kids.
I think you get into trouble when you talk about onboarding your wife.
Yeah, just not waterboarding.
Yeah.
Like, with the babies.
It's easier and cheaper to keep the one that you have.
Yeah. And after how many years have we been married? 16 years, I think. Yeah, it's like just new challenges. Like we argue, the thing we argue about is arguing. Like, I don't know what you guys, what's big in your household, but it's arguing. And like, sometimes I'm like, I don't want to argue about arguing. Yeah. Like we agree on the issue. We just hit heads on how we were discussing it. And I'll just apologize. Like, I'm sorry. Like I don't want to suck. Like I'll do whatever I need to do. And she, it'll kind of make her mad. Like doesn't want me to roll over, like wants to solve it. And I'm like, I just don't want to argue about arguing.
I think ours is more of communication. I've heard that a couple of times in my going on 21 years of marriage. And I come from, the German, introverted, quiet, don't talk about
feelings. It. Yeah.
My wife is a Mexican Catholic.
It's loud.
One of 11.
Yeah.
And it was, emotions everywhere. And even at the dinner table, it was like wolves on a kill it's just the way that they.
And operate. You're probably even like, whoa, why are you so mad? And they're like, I'm not. She's like, I'm not mad.
It was just like,
no, this is just how
natural.
Yeah.
So for us, it's the opposites attract kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But yet I am told that I need to communicate more effectively, more often. Thank goodness for technology because you can do WhatsApp and talk to your family.
Yeah.
Well, you said you had long distance, right?
We did, yeah.
So my wife and I, we met in high school. And then we had long distance through college. And so talking to each other was the only connection on the phone every single day. Yep. And so, not that there aren't conflicts that come up, but we're very used to communicating. And when we don't, that's when we get out of sync, when we don't communicate. So yeah, that was just part of just like talking about things and staying connected.
Yeah, very similar. It forced me to have to communicate from that long distance. And not that every couple should go through a long distance relationship to make it work, but it really tests and tries, and you're going to be committed to it or you're not. So it's interesting you had a similar experience.
Well, and how do we do that? Like I never had that, and I've always reflected on that. Like he'll talk to his wife throughout the day. I sometimes won't even talk to my wife till I get home. Like that's just normal. And it is a little weird sometimes. And like when we do connect during the day, it's really great. But we're also not the type to just, how you doing? What's going on? Like, and I'm not saying that's what you, I'm not saying that's what you do, but like, I don't even know what you do. Exactly like I can have a conversation like this, but like, I'm like working. And then she calls it was like earlier today because I had called her, so she called me back, and I didn't need that question answered anymore. So she's like, "Hey, just checking in." I'm like, "Cool. Is there a question?" Like I'm doing stuff like, and I just don't know how to do that in the same way because I never had a long distance relationship and didn't need to try to communicate. Now, definitely need to try.
It's all just practice communication, I think, because I think even just communicating that, being like, oh, do you need something? I'm distracted with something, and it's like, sure. Okay, yeah, that's fine. And like, just getting to the point where like there's less. Like,
see, because I was probably just really annoying on my side without communicating why I was being annoying.
Yeah, there's like trying to like have less unsaid stuff. Okay, I can pull this back into the business world.
Yes.
So one of my favorite talks ever, and then we got to interact with the guy again. There's a guy who runs an improv shop down in Chicago, and one of his biggest stars was Jerry from Parks and Rec. Sure. He trained, and the guy was talking about business because he also does like some marketing stuff and some consulting. And he was talking about like negotiating and doing meetings and creative meetings and how communication was like the biggest thing. It's just like, he shared a specific meeting where they won this big contract because they're talking, doing the pitch, and he was like, the quiet guy, he's like, hey, I forget the name, like, hey Jerry, you seem like you're not loving this idea. Could you share about that? And like, I'm just like, so my one side of my family is like Minnesota nice, and I'm like, to me, like peacekeeper kind of personality, Minnesota nice, like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine like saying that, like how like uncomfortable is it? But he was just like getting to the subtext and just like communicating the uncommunicated things. And then it just like, once that person shared, it kind of like eased the tension of like, oh, okay, well, how do we address that? Can we change this? And it came around and then they won this, big pitch. But there's so many times that doesn't happen. It's communication. We're not saying it. Something's unsaid. It's not going well. We don't address it. We just walk away. We're like, that was weird and awkward. That didn't go well.
It has to be engaged on both sides. But Parks and Rec is underrated. And having lived through local municipal government,
oh my gosh,
I think everybody should at some point join a commission, a board, a council, if nothing else, for the comedic effect.
I was gonna say, just for the hilarity of it,
like scenarios that you're like, this could be a sitcom. This particular instance. But also plug for local government. If you want to make the biggest impact you can,
right,
participate locally, because you can actually influence things versus voting at a national level and complaining about it later.
Your sphere of influence, a friend of ours talks about. So it's about 4:20 somewhere here, in fact, and we have a little game that we like to play. So Maria, can you go to graphics over there on the right side?
It's a very interactive show,
It's a very interactive show. Design. And then under video clips, click the thing on the left one. Yep, click that one. We're going to play Two Truths and a Lie. We're going to get to know Sam a little bit better. I feel like we play this every time we go and hang out anyway, but this is a fun part of the process. So you're going to come up with 3 facts about yourself. And one of them
is tell me I had to prepare anything, but
going to be a lie. No, it's better this way. We'll see how good of a liar you are.
Okay.
One is a lie. The other 2 are truths. And it is our goal and the goal of people listening at home to determine what the lie is. 2 truths and a lie. We can give you a second too if you want to think about it,
people at home,
or write it down.
Okay.
I can vamp while we're doing it too. Let's see. We do have another episode coming up as well. I can plug that with Tara, and I don't know how to say her last name. I probably should have asked Doyan, who actually works at the Petrus Foundation, and they help Catholic and nonprofit groups do fundraising and promotion. So we met them at the Congress, and that was really great. Talk to her. We're going to have her on the happy hour and just pick her brain about all the things. You're looking at me. Are you ready?
I'm just trying to think of how creatively to word some of these things.
You're like, I'm just thinking about the lie. I just gotta figure out the lie.
No, I'm trying to think about how to make the truth sound like a lie.
We did have one guy who told us 3 lies or 3 truths. What did Brent do? I can't remember. He cheated.
Yeah, he just forgot and just told us 3 truths.
Yeah.
I think. And then we he's at the end after we were guessing, he's like, I actually forgot and I just told 3 truths.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm up. Okay.
All right. What do you got?
Any order I want.
Any order you want.
I ruptured my spleen and was within 20 minutes of bleeding to death when I was 16. I have caught a 360-pound marlin off the coast of Vanuatu. And
so many tiny details in that one.
My uncle has been in a calendar with a famous comedian filled with different pig shots. By that I mean position figurine.
I'm not very familiar with pig shots. All right. So the first one is you ruptured your spleen when you were 16 and were 20 minutes away from bleeding out. Number 2, you caught a 300 and some pound marlin off the coast of Puerto Vallarta. I don't know, something Spanish. Vanuatu. And then number 3, your uncle is in a pig calendar with a comedian.
Yes.
Those are good.
Yeah,
Those are really good.
I don't even know if that place is like a real place or if he just made up
Yeah,
that
right.
word. That's like
He's like
But I
stupid.
said it twice.
Part-
It's stupid,
Yeah.
stupid gringos.
There's actually.
We'll give them. Let's see, a couple of people online. You can guess number 1, number 2, number 3. Ruptured his spleen, almost died, almost bled out. Caught a huge marlin somewhere down south, and then has an uncle who's a pig aficionado and was in a calendar with a comedian.
This is a challenging one. Okay, so we got to reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
We'll work it backwards. This is how.
They had a lot of details in them too.
Yeah.
So any one of the details
So-
could be a lie.
So we have a farm background. So that's kind of checking out. I mean, I don't know why it's checking out.
I mean, they do weird things
There's a
like pig
calendar.
calendars. Yeah.
Comedian pig calendar.
Yeah. Sounds like a Jeff Foxworthy thing.
Yeah,
or
apparently I subscribe to the wrong calendars.
Larry the Cable Guy.
I'm
You're not into pig poses?
I think that one's good. I think the Puerto Vallarta one is good because he was there and he likes to do a lot of outdoor stuff.
Yeah, the
I don't-
fishing, I can confirm
Well, and it's
fishing.
just, I don't know. Is it a minor detail? 360 pound.
Marlin?
I don't even know. Again, if that's like reasonable,
Yeah.
be like, oh yeah, the biggest one I ever caught was like 10 pounds. I don't even know.
Definitely tuna. There's other big fish you can
Okay.
get. Lane Norton was fishing and caught some several 100-pound. I don't know if it was a marlin.
It's also the psychological game of like, where do you put the lie in
Yeah.
the lineup?
Yep.
I feel like the spleen could be the one.
Was that sports related? The spleen?
Yes.
It was.
It might not have been the spleen. It might have been something else,
Yeah.
like appendix.
Look at his face when he said that.
I'm not good at poker.
Or he's
I think
happy,
it's a spleen.
or it's heavy because it's like when they're going for your bluff,
Right.
and it's the
He can't
he's
contain the
super
emotions.
excited 'cause
Yeah.
he's about to win.
That's right.
I think this is a therapy session. This is good for you guys.
Yeah. Your wife is like, you idiots. I could tell you what it is. She probably knows your poker face.
All right, I'm going spleen.
You're going spleen. Do you have any guesses at home on the chat?
There's people actually watching this.
There's a couple. Yeah. We do it live because it's easier to switch now than to edit later. And then we're like, oh, just go live. Huge audience. There's singles and singles of people watching. Could be
Pairs upon pairs.
could be your aunt, could be my friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
My aunts are frequent watchers.
Yeah. And Carolyn, our good friend. But not my wife. My wife has like never caught one of these.
It's probably good.
Yeah.
That's why I talk so openly about
That's why the marriage is
unloading her.
marriage is so good. Are we talking about waterboarding? Okay, so spleen. I was gonna go spleen. Marlin, who didn't see home Marlin somewhere. Pig calendar. I want the pig calendar to be true. I don't know enough about fish. And your face looked kind of lie when I asked you to follow up about the spleen. So I'm gonna go spleen as well. Those are our
All
two
right,
guesses.
We
Two
don't.
spleens.
Do we
Two
have,
spleens.
we don't.
Anybody
have
else?
any other
All right.
guesses? No. Okay.
Guesses are locked in.
So, did go to Vanuatu. It was the original. That's where bungee jumping was invented by college
Oh.
roommates from New Zealand. That's where his wedding was. So it was our second honeymoon. Went there and we did catch a lot of fish, including a
Nice.
big marlin.
My
So that was
gosh.
legit.
Quick question. How much meat do you get off a 300
So
pound
that's
marlin?
the funny part. We had already kept a 90-pound tuna,
Uh-huh.
and we tagged the marlin and let it go. But you had to hold it, and so we did a measurement. So it was an estimate, but it was about 350 pounds.
Oh
Yeah.
my
I have kept a 160-pound marlin off of the coast of Manzanillo in Mexico, but this was elsewhere. So you get a lot. To answer your question,
Yeah.
we
That sounds
also
amazing.
had a lot of beverages and kept the fish roe, the eggs out of that thing, and fried them up. And that was a treat. My mother-in-law was not impressed, but that was a good time. Caught the marlin. I was 16 years old, and we were at the state tournament in Stevens Point, and I pitched the first game for the baseball championship. Second game, there was a collision, and I collided with the center fielder. Caught the ball. I was running in. Shortstop jumped, hit me in the chest. My spleen swung and sliced on my floating rib, and I was within minutes of bleeding out. So they had to take me to the hospital, and stayed up there in Point for a week. That was pretty. That was in 1993.
So straight to the emergency room, and they
I
opened
finished
you
the
up,
inning.
or
I finished the inning. I almost passed out. We went and shook hands.
from blood loss?
Yeah. And
Wow.
So it was crushing my lungs. The blood was in my abdomen, just squeezing my lungs shut. So nobody knew that. And so we got back to the dugout, and I kind of passed out and came to. So then they took me to the hospital. Oh my gosh. So that was something.
Wow.
We did win state that year, but I was in the hospital for the championship game.
No thanks to you.
And then my uncle actually was in a calendar with sheep. It was not.
Oh,
So
that
it
was
sheep. It
good.
was sheep. And he was
I
out in
liked
San
your pig
Francisco
poses.
area. Yeah.
Who's the comedian?
So I was gonna. It's not Gallagher. It's the. I'm blanking on it. I'll send you a picture of the calendar, but it's the
crazy guy,
The crazy.
like the '80s, from the '80s.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It will come to me.
Oh, I feel like I was just learning about
Everybody's
him.
Wore glasses. He was like this Latino. Father Guido Sarducci.
Not who I was thinking.
Okay. Father Guido. Yep.
Father Guido, like a priest?
No, but he wasn't. I mean, that was his role. He was like a.
Father Guido.
Sarducci.
No.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna copy the calendar.
All right.
It was sheep. It was sheep poses.
Oh my gosh.
You can
Sheep
read into that what
poses.
you want.
There are laws in some states that you can't put a sheep's back legs in your boots. You can read into that what you want.
That sounds like an Old Testament thing.
Yeah, right. Sounds like
how have we come up with this?
yeah, sounds like a civic, public special interest.
Yeah.
Stop people from doing that stuff.
So in New Zealand, there were 15 sheep per person. My roommate was a 7-footer from New Zealand. Played basketball. I played baseball.
Oh wow.
He said when they were kids, they used to jump on the ram's back and hold on. But when they got older, they got smarter and they would take them to the edge of the cliff because they pushed back.
The Rams would? Oh.
Sorry. It's not my joke. Not my joke.
It's okay. It's not my. We got to bring back dirty jokes in the right setting. I have a cigar group now, and occasionally a dirty joke comes out. Like, oh, it's so good. I feel 12 again. I feel. Remember the nostalgic? I feel like okay, and then we'll end. But the whole idea of nostalgia, like the good old days, like, are you ever in the good old days? But I think there's this idea of like you have an emotional memory of a certain time, and a lot of times it's like when somebody's taking care of you. And so it's like the good old days were back when I was younger. Well, you didn't have responsibilities. Like you didn't have the anxiety that you have now. But how can you get yourself into that place? Like go up to the cabin and go fishing. And like the good old days are now too. But it's like when you can have intentionality with those around you. So that's how I'm going to wrap it up. Sam, thank you so much for coming and hanging.
No, this was great.
With a little happy hour. I was very close to mixing more drinks, but then I was like, I need to get home tonight still. But I hope we can hang out soon. I don't think St. Ambrose has like a returning parent party. I mean, we had the Carbon 4 one. I don't know if you were at that one. And then, I don't know what next party we'll see you at.
Just have to make something happen.
We'll just have to hang out otherwise. That'd be great. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Is there anything you want to plug? Anything cool with 1848 you want to share? Or?
I mean, appreciate the opportunity, but I don't think there's anything shameless that I need to plug. Check out our website, see if you need it.
You'll see your signs everywhere, and
Yes.
if you need something built, give Sam a call.
Right.
That'd be great. All right. We got anything else?
If you build it, they will come.
That's what they say. Well, thanks for hanging. That's what we got. We'll see you next time. I do so many of these things. I don't know how to sign off on this one. So up in the top.